We on? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala RasoolAllah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream. As today we look at the affairs of the Umma and all of today's news, or most of today's news, it's going to be surrounding England. All right. England has two issues that are affairs of the Ummah. We're going to read about Leicester. Okay. Leicester, disorder, fear lingers among cities, Muslims and Hindus. Of course, it's actually pronounced Leicester. So what's going on here? Because this is newsworthy and it is concerning the Ummah. So this article is from the BBC. And it says people are not coming out of their homes. They're scared. Remember, we talked about this a week ago or two, maybe 2 weeks ago. And it was just like one gang, a little minor skirmish or whatever. Apparently, since then, it's grown. So we're going to see what's going on here. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever is not concerned with the affairs of the Ummah is not one of us. Jay Patel was running a busy dinner service at his vegetarian restaurant in Leicester. On Saturday night, the dining room was packed with about 80 customers. Couples, families, even a local politician. Suddenly, a huge crowd of young men marched past. It's estimated there were hundreds of men walking, wearing masks, and dressed head to toe in black. Some of them were armed. People were running on the side of the street, of both sides of the street, banging on doors. So we closed all the curtains, locked the door, and shut all the lights, even with 80 customers inside. Ever since then, customers stopped coming. Okay. The dining room was empty, which is very unusual. We've been open for 4 years. All right, and the restaurant would normally be busy at all hours of the day. People are canceling their tables. They said, we don't want to come there because this is the site of marches. People are usually coming in groups of 3 and 4, but now there are no people coming at all. Okay. The weekend's unrest in Leicester was the culmination of several weeks of growing tension between the Hindus and the Muslims in the city of Leicester. It reportedly began after a cricket match, okay, between India and Pakistan at the end of August. I guess that was like the flare. And of course, there's all the BJP stuff is behind all that. But the cricket match was the flare. And the India-Pakistan cricket match, they're always politically charged. Okay, and one thing that everyone I speak to in Leicester agrees on is that none of this is really about cricket. That just inflamed the matter. Right? The tensions are always about what's happening in India. And the BJP's, not only they have their priests themselves are really lighting up the hearts of people. Okay, so the Muslims are in India are always on the receiving end of that, and a lot of these Rams and religious people, they have their own extremism. Okay, I mean, I'm sure not all the Hindus are like this, but they do have an extremist branch. And of course, there are some cities where this party and these types of rhetoric spreads more than in other cities, like Bombay, for example. My barber's from Bombay, and he's like, no, it's like more metropolitan and none of this nonsense goes on. So a total of 47 people have been arrested, 20 in one weekend, and some people have been sentenced for possession of a weapon. Now the fight spilled online as well, and claims of attacks on people because of their religion have gone viral, meaning that footage of people who got beaten up spread around. But many are unverified, and in one case, it was confirmed that people reported such a beating that actually never happens. That's what they're saying. How do you prove that something never happens? I guess there are ways. If the purported victims in the said attack came and said, no, I was not victimized, then you can know for sure that it didn't happen. On Wednesday, officers urged people not to share unverified claims on social media to scare everybody and rouse more emotion. Leicester's government heard one man sentenced for carrying a knife had been influenced by social media. So he went around carrying a knife, and apparently that's a crime. Well, I guess having an unbrandished knife is a crime in many places. I mean, having a knife in your pocket, at least in the state of New Jersey, you get 6 inches. 6 inches, anyone could have a knife in your pocket, not in your hand, walking around with it. And then anything beyond 6 inches is no longer considered a knife. It's considered, you need a license for it, okay? Anything beyond 6 inches. 6 inches is pretty long. That's like a blade this big. Who needs a blade to walk around with a blade this big? But if you want one for protection, you can have one. Okay. Maliki Click says, like I said on Twitter, they will label us whether you lay down or stand up. So stay standing up. Put these Hindutva on their backs. So that's what Maliki Click would do. End this thing right away. Don't talk in this nonsense. Footage shared by both Hindus and Muslims on social media, allegedly taken during the unrest, always shows groups from both sides as masked men banging on people's windows. Nobody knows which side they're on. Honestly, if you're just someone who likes chaos, then this is your place, because nobody knows who's doing what, who's masked. All right? And they take footage of people going to Hindu majority areas and pulling down the religious decorations. And then going to the Muslim populated streets and chanting Hindu nationalist chants. Far-right Hindu nationalists chants such as Jai Shri Ram. I think that means long live Ram, the idol. One video posted online shows a man climbing on the roof of a Hindu temple. You know, they're telling us not to post this stuff and how dangerous it's supposed to. They got me curious. I want to see all these videos now. All right? Because this guy, he climbs the roof of a Hindu temple on Belgrave Road, and he starts pulling down the flags and everything, all their signage. In another video shared by the temple itself on its Facebook page, a group of men set one of the temple flags on fire. Well, lucky they only set the flag on fire. They could have set the whole building on fire. But here's the thing. Just as like, I think BBC's telling people, don't post these things. Posting these things is causing more inflammation of the problem. And then they're going giving me these juicy descriptions. I want to watch them now, right? Okay, so these videos are supposedly filmed during the unrest on Saturday night. And even after a few days of calm, there's a fearful atmosphere in the area. I'll tell you what, the people of Leicester are lucky, that generally I think people are employed. If this was one of the countries like on the eastern side of the world, these youth would still have nothing to do on Monday morning and continue on Monday morning. But I think most people go to school and are employed. So these things are always going to calm down. They might inflame on a weekend. They're going to calm down eventually because people have other things to do. Fall's coming around and football season's coming around and people are going to get busy. That's the usual. Of course, anything could happen, but that is the usual. All right, what else is going on? When I visit the temple, now, a woman says, the door is locked. Can't go worship my idols. A woman opens it for me. But when I introduce myself, I am told they're not speaking to the press, and I'm quickly ushered out. Okay, apparently this is the journalist saying that, not a worshiper. The charred flag hangs off the temple's fence. Of course, they're leaving it there to, I guess, make a statement to show what happened to them. Kusher Chawan, who has owned Milan's, which is a shop opposite of the temple, for 45 years, said he'd never seen anything like this in Leicester. It was so intimidating, he says. This is the first time we've had something like this, any kind of racial riots in this city. Okay. Hindu festivals are usually a busy time for Mr. Chawan and for other businesses on the Golden Mile, it's called. But he worries that the unrest will stop people from coming to the area. The 9-day festival of Navaratri begins next Monday, and then Diwali is on the 24th of October. Well, that's going to be quite the scene, all right? I hope that the communities now begin to understand and stamp it down, because if this continues, business will be disrupted. But more than business, people are scared to come to Leicester. where people come into Leicester in the first place. It's not like it's Disneyland is over there or something. What will people be coming to Leicester for? Only team coming to Leicester are the visiting soccer teams. Okay. And Leicester will lose its charm. What charm are you talking about? Maybe relative to India, it has some charm, but does Leicester have charm that we don't know about? No offense to the people of Leicester, but trust me, there's no charm there. I think I passed by Leicester one time, driving, I think it's on the way to Birmingham. It has always attracted a lot of people from the outside. I don't think so. Conflict between parts of Hindu and Muslim communities is common in India, where there are long-standing tensions. I mean, on one hand, they're telling us that things were fine. Now they're telling us that there are long-standing tensions. But I guess he's right that in history there are long-standing tensions, of course, between any two neighbors except for America and Canada. Recent years have seen a particular increase in factional unrest and hate crimes against religious minorities. And there have been fears, aren't they both religious minorities in England? There have been fears among minority communities and human rights groups. The problem has worsened in India. Yeah, that's correct. In India, under the BJP, which is the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is essentially the Hindu far-right party. In a report released last year, Human Rights Watch warned that ever since the BJP started its rise to power in 2014, it has taken various legislative and other actions that have legitimized discrimination against religious minorities. What do you mean religious minorities? There's one minority that they're against. Like, they never want to say that it's against Muslims, against one minority that they're fighting. Are they beating up on Sikhs? Are they beating up on, what's that other faith that's there? Jains? You know Jains? It's another religious group that's in India. And their thing is all about onions, and I think they only eat things that are under the earth, or they're not allowed to eat something under the earth. We studied this in George Washington University, GW. And I had a great professor, to be honest with you. He was a Hindu priest, but he was a great professor. Right? He was so good. I was engaged the entire time in his class. He knew how to lecture. This was a guy, you walk in the class and you heard that he's a priest, and you're like, oh, they just got a guy to fill in, right? All right, teach this Hindu class. He was so engaging as a professor, and he brought out, and he had a lot of respect. I don't know if he was saying this just because I was there, but he had a lot of respect for what he would call the ulema, which is the ulama, because he would go into the history, and our scholars would debate the Hindu philosophers in peace times. There were peace times, and they would have these long debates about things, right? And that was like a type of chess, intellectual chess that they would play, and it was interesting. So when they say discrimination against religious minorities is one minority that the BJP is targeting. They're not targeting Sikhs, and they're not targeting Jains. Who else is there? There are Christians there. They're not targeting any of these groups. But the BBC, I mean, maybe they don't want to, Human Rights Watch, maybe they want to just cover their backs by saying religious minorities. In February of 2020, 53 people were killed in Delhi. 40 of them were Muslims, following weeks of peaceful protest against a new citizenship law demonstrators feared that would target Muslims. And in February 2002, more than 1,000 people were killed in 3 days of anti-Muslim riots in the Indian state of Gujarat. One of the worst outbreaks of violence since independence. Now, some people are talking about should the Muslims there make hijrah? Well, the answer is that there are many cities in India that are peaceful. So that's where you need to go. Simple. And this is an image here of that they're showing. What is Mr. Chua selling? He has a restaurant apparently, and he has gods for sale. You want a god? They come in plastic. They come in all sorts of You want a false god and an idol? The elephant man is there beating a drum, and that's your god. Okay, go worship him. Unbelievable. All right, this has raised questions about whether outside influences were involved in the violence. This guy's going to come to your aid when you need it, man. This is what you're, like, of all the years that you have had to innovate your religion, this is what you came up with? I had hired some cartoonists out of Disney to give you something better. Yeah, and even when you do idolatry, you don't need to do it good. This has raised questions about whether outside influences were involved in the violence. According to the Leicestershire police, a significant number of those arrested in the disorder were not from the city. On Monday, temporary Chief Constable Rob Nixon said a group of people from other cities came to disrupt and cause harm. Of course, a lot of people who are out there, they like trouble, they're going to come to Leicester and cause trouble. We saw that happen in America when there were some protests in different places in Minnesota, and people came from all over the place. That one kid came with like a shotgun, right? Drove all the way from Illinois to do to be part of this. Violence between Hindus and Muslims is rare in the UK, especially in Leicester, which is known for a strong sense of cohesion. What is this, all this reputation of Leicester? It has a charm, now it has cohesion, people come visit us. Are they imagining this stuff? There's long solidarity between Hindus and Muslims in the UK because they're both diasporic minority communities, and they face similar problems of racism and discrimination. Well, now I guess they turned a corner, because it used to be the whites of Britain are, spitting on both of them. Everyone brown to them is the same. But in these cities, I'm imagining that the population of Hindus and Muslims has risen so much that they've lost that. They've been unified by having the same bully, essentially. All those years in the past, what unified them, they have the same bully who doesn't care whether you're a Sikh, a Hindu, or a Muslim. And he doesn't know the difference, and he doesn't want to know the difference. You're just brown people from the subcontinent. And they spill all their racism on you. Now that I think that their population is much larger, and the racists can't do this to them anymore, now they can start looking at each other and competing against each other. Just my thoughts there. Now, there was a joint statement delivered on the steps of Leicester's Jamia Masjid on Tuesday. Community leaders from both faith groups stressed this point. Our two faiths have lived harmoniously in this wonderful city for half a century, and we arrived in this city together. We face the same challenges. We fought off racist haters together. See, that's what I'm saying. They fought off the racist haters together, but the racist haters today, they don't do this anymore, right? Not that I think of. They probably hold it in their heart, but you can't face off when the numbers are increasingly getting bigger. And we made this city a beacon of diversity and community cohesion. They were heartbroken, adding physical attacks on innocent individuals and unwarranted damages to properties are not part of a decent society, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, a Muslim sister says, the idea of community leaders having significant influence is outdated, she says. This is a Muslima. Her name is Yasmin Surti. Now, so what is she saying? She's from the Federation of Muslim Organizations in Leicester. Well, isn't that a community leadership organization? She says community leaders, their influence is ancient. Well, that's possibly true if he can't compete with the internet. We need to have dialogue, and clearly we need to reflect on how we reach these young people who may not be in touch with the elders in the mosques and the temples, right? And there needs to be a lot of learning ahead. Majid Freeman, a local fundraiser for Middle East causes, he said he's angry about what he regards as a lack of police action. Well, they're sitting watching back. Maybe I'm not going to say anything because it might be false, but I was thinking that in the back of my mind, they're probably, sitting back watching this chaos. But then again, probably the police must have a lot of Hindu and Muslims in the police force itself. So he said that there were many questions among the community about why the police was so late to respond to the protests. However, temporary Chief Constable Rob Nixon, Mr. Nixon, has said the police are working to keep you safe and to arrest and bring to justice those causing harm. Even at the height of the violence, there were glimpses of unity as crowds of masked men surrounded the Shiva Sagar, which is the Hindu place. A Muslim community leader came to safely escort the largely Hindu clientele out of the restaurant safety. Oh, Shiva Sagar is his restaurant. Okay. One of the guys from the Muslim community, I don't know his name, but this is what it says. But he came in and then one by one, he took each family and he dropped them off. He said, if you want to go outside, then this is my priority. And the customers went out with him one by one. That's the BBC writing about this. Anyone here from Leicester so they could give us some juicy details? All right, Al Jazeera. Let's see what they have to say. Community leaders and local politicians in the British city of Leicester have called for an immediate end to the violence after weeks of unrest. Oh, why don't you just roll out the National Guard to walk the streets for a few days, right? Don't they have a military? Don't they have a national guard, right? So send your military out. They're not doing anything anyway. Tell me, what's the British military doing? Send them out there. Let them walk in the streets for a week or two. Everyone will crawl back into their homes. Am I wrong about that? Seems to me that that's a solution. All right. Anza Jama says, I'm from Leicester. All right. Tell us what's going on. Give us your... It's not as chaotic as people claim. And yeah, they essentially, I guess the news media needs some news, right? Okay. They need some news. The president of the Hindu temple, he read out a statement, saddened and heartbroken to see the eruption of tensions, physical attacks on individuals, and unwarranted damage to property are not part of a decent society, blah, blah, blah. Shocking scenes of unacceptable incidents of violence, says a politician. All right. Dozens of people have been arrested. What's the cause of the outbreak? All right. They just said that clashes started between Indians and Pakistanis after the Asia Cup, which took place in Dubai last August. After the march, a large crowd went out, and some of them were waving Indian flags. Okay. And then some people started chanting, Pakistan, Murdabad, death to Pakistan. And then people started showing social media videos or sharing videos on social media of attacks. And then, Jai Shri Ram, long live Ram, which is a war cry for the Hindus. Okay. Some members, they said the unrest is linked to Modi. They blame Modi for everything. Let's see what our correspondent from Leicester is saying. All right. Nothing but facts. We have a on-the-ground correspondent from Leicester. She says it's not as chaotic as people think. Harris Amin says, last week they're all mourning the Queen, so nothing happened. These Indians are freshy. What does that mean? And they're antagonizing people regardless of the match. Fresh meaning like they're behaving fresh, or they're fresh immigrants. Oh, you got it right, bro. How'd you know that? Okay, we didn't have that. We used to say fobs. Yeah, we had that, fresh off the boat, fob. Yeah. They're immigrants, they're on student visas, and they're all about Indian politics. Thank you to our correspondent. We have on-the-ground correspondent for the Nothing But Facts live stream from Leicester. All right. Signing off, Anzi Jama. Anza. Al-Ansa. Tayfoon says, Any good books or biographies of female Muslim scholars? Okay, we'll take those questions after we finish. Okay. So she's saying these Hindus are not from Leicester originally. Okay. They are from, they're fobs, right? All fobs. All right. But I did want to see the videos, to be honest with you. No offense to the people who are against violence, but they keep saying that these videos surface, but, you know, burning flag. I'm just curious to see what it looks like. But they don't want anyone sharing them, but they're tempt you by describing them. How does this make any sense? Here it is. Whilst it is right that we condemn the desecration of Hindu symbols, you must represent all Indians and also condemn the deliberate targeting of Indian Muslims and Indian Sikhs. Says the Secretary General Zahra Muhammad of the Muslim Council of Britain. And she wrote this letter to the Indian High Commission. All right, that India is really responsible for stoking the flames. Do we want more Leicester, or have we finished it basically? Khalas. We got the summary. We don't have a video to show anybody, so. All right, next piece of news that is out of England. Last Wednesday, I think, was the day in which the Queen died. Right in the middle of while we were doing the live stream, then the news spread that the Queen died. And the usual stuff went around that when a Muslim, you know, when a person dies, and some people say that God, you know, rest in peace, and then we talk about dua. Can we make dua for someone who didn't die as a Muslim? And we say no, because dua is basically assuming our religion is upon them, right? Like that they're part of our religion. They didn't want our religion, so why are you forcing it on them? And they didn't want it. But anyway, let's see what what ABC News says. ABC News of Australia. Why King Charles' support of Islam is important for Muslims around the world. Let's just see what it says. Okay. I personally have heard a lot of positive things surrounding Prince Charles. Okay, so his accession to the throne means there are many issues he'll no longer speak freely on. He's already made his views towards Islam and Muslim people clear, however, in his past years as a prince. The Islamic world is the custodian of one of the greatest treasures of accumulated wisdom and spiritual knowledge available to humanity, he said as a prince in 2010, giving a speech about Islam and the environment at Oxford University. He had a fascination with Islam, okay, attempting to learn Arabic so he could read the Quran, which was revealed in the book Charles at 70, Thoughts, Hopes, and Dreams. As a patron of the Oxford Center of Islamic Studies, which means he pays part of the salaries there. The king spoke in 1993 about building connection between the Islamic and Western worlds. I believe wholeheartedly, he says, that links between these two worlds matter more today than ever before because the degree of misunderstanding between the Islamic and Western world remains dangerously high. The need for the two to live and work together in our increasingly interdependent world has never been greater. Okay, good. In 2020, he visited the Palestinian territories for the first time. That's massive, because usually they're never even allowed to come near the Palestinian territories. He also publicly disagreed with the burqa ban in Europe. So what does this mean for the Muslim community now that he is king? UK Muslim leaders hope that he is a defender of faith. During a sermon earlier this month at the Cambridge Central Mosque, English Islamic scholar Abdul Hakim Murad said Charles deserves credit for his effort to encourage reconciliation. In an age when misunderstanding about the Muslim religion is widespread, we welcome the fact that the new head of state has a long record of sympathy for Islam, having made many statements in favor of better coexistence, respect, and understanding, he told ABC. Professor Abdul Hakim Murad told ABC. Now, this is not ABC from America. This is ABC from Australia. It is important for Muslims to appreciate that the beauty of their religion is understood by significant figures in the British establishment. The reign of King Charles comes at a time when research showed Muslims were the second least liked group in the UK after Irish travelers. Really? Oh, gypsies. Romani and Irish gypsies, essentially. I don't know if that's politically incorrect way to say it, but that's essentially what they are. All right. The survey by the University of Birmingham said that 26% of British people felt negatively towards Muslims. Zara Muhammad, Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, that's like ISNA for us, I guess, said that the monarchy had an important role to play in challenging negative narratives by offering a message of unity and inclusion. We also hope the king will build upon his own legacy as Prince of Wales, acting upon his desire to be a defender of faith and continuing to champion the right of faith groups to practice freely in Britain. Okay, I agree with that. Moreover, as we look towards the reign of King Charles III, we hope for continued constructive engagement. I guess these kings, what's important is, but just the symbolic statements that may sway people's minds. At least give them, it influences the backdrop of their perception. In Australia, there are mixed views about the monarchy. What is Australia's relationship with the monarchy? Can't remember really. Adil Salman, he is president of the Islamic Council of Victoria, said he welcomed public figures taking an interest in Muslims and Islam, and he's happy to discuss the religion with them. It's great to build and improve relationships and perceptions of the monarchy, all right, around the world. But we expect that he cannot take political position because that's not his role anymore as king. Okay? Musawwar Ahmed Bajwa, a member of the Muslim Youth of Australia, so YM of Australia, right, also pointed to the expectation for the new king to be neutral on political matters so he doesn't cause controversy and conflict. Even if King Charles may have voiced opinions in the past for all sorts of causes and charities, now that he's king, all his duties will be to be neutral towards everyone. Okay? So, that's it. That's the summary of the news for you today that relates to the Muslims. If there's anything else, I personally didn't really see it, but that's your news. Both of it surrounding England, and I think England will increasingly continue to be like the place where Muslims in the Western Hemisphere, all the news is going to come out of England, because it's actually the most accepting of Muslims in all of the Western countries. All right, so what is going on with the hijab burning in Iran? Iranian unrest. Women burn headscarves at anti-hijab protest. Crowds cheered when a woman burned her hijab. Okay. Activists said a woman was among 3 protesters shot dead. Whoa. By security forces in Urmia, Piranshah, and Kermanshah. Authorities accused protesters of killing 2 civilians in the Kermanshah. At least 7 people are now reported to have been killed since protests against hijab laws and morality police erupted after Mahsa Amini's death. These women in Iran, says Rana Rahimpour, northern city of Sari, are dancing and burning their headscarves. Anti-regime protests have now spread to dozens of cities. So this is like the Persian Spring, or what? Are all triggered by the death of Mahsa Amini, while she died in custody of Iran's morality police. The 22-year-old Kurdish woman from the northern western Syria of Sakaz died in the hospital Friday after spending 3 days in a coma, which means she must have been hit in the head or something. She was with her brother in Tehran when she was arrested by the morality police, who accused her of breaking the law, requiring women to cover their hair with a headscarf, and their arms and legs must be covered with loose clothing. She fell into a coma shortly after collapsing at a detention center. There were reports that police beat her head with a baton. Of course, you don't just fall into a coma, right? They beat her head with a baton, according to one report, and they banged her head against the vehicle. Sometimes they throw people in a van, and they drive in the van, and then that van, like their heads bang around in the van. Her family says she was fit and healthy. Her tragic death and allegations of torture and ill treatment must be promptly and impartially and effectively investigated by an independent and competent authority. What authority is going to investigate the police, right? Unless you have a federal police, which is like our version of the FBI, right? And not a lot of these countries have that kind of federal police. She noted that the UN had received numerous and verified videos of violent treatment of women by the morality police. They expand their street patrols in recent months to crack down on anyone wearing a loose hijab. If you're wearing a dubutta, don't wear it in Iran. They're going to stop you. Authorities must stop targeting, harassing, and detaining women who do not abide by hijab rules, they say in their appeal. An aide to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, paid a visit to Ms. Amini's family on Monday and told them all institutions will take action to defend the rights that were violated. Senior MP Jalal Rashidi publicly criticized the morality police, saying the force was a mistake, as it only produced loss and damage for Iran. Following the 1979 revolution, by the way, thank you for pointing me to this story. I had heard about it, but I forgot about it. Authorities in Iran imposed a mandatory dress code requiring all women to wear a headscarf and loose-fitting clothing that disguises their figure in public. Morality police, formerly known as Gashti Irshad, Guidance Patrol, are tasked, among other things, with ensuring women conform with the authorities' interpretation of proper clothing. Officers have the power to stop women and assess whether they are showing too much hair, if their pants and overcoats are too short, close-fitting, or they're wearing too much makeup. There are punishments, such as being fined, being imprisoned, and being flogged. Personal opinion is that deen really has to come from your heart. A personal opinion, right? A lot of force doesn't work, right? Rarely does force work, right? It's very rare that it works. There's certain limits that I think that you could put down, but I really feel that religion has to come from people. I think force will work maybe for your personal dependence that you're responsible for whom you show so much care and love, at the same time to wash away the force that you may sometimes, rarely, like 1 out of 20 times. And then that number keeps, as the kids get older, that number keeps decreasing, the use of force. Because when you're young, you're able to teach kids guidance and teach them and mold them their behavior. You have the 100% right to mold them. And if you're molding them to something good, such as you're molding their time, their schedule around salah, they get used to making salah, covering their bodies. You can do that when they're young, then you don't have to really use force when they're older. So the price of good kids when they're older is to spend a lot of time with them when they're young. You can't have it both ways. Ignore them and then force them later on. So in 2014, Iranian women began sharing photos and videos of themselves flouting the hijab laws. It has since inspired other movements, including White Wednesdays and Girls of Revolution Street. There's a lot of major secularists in Persia and Iran who they don't like any religion at all, so they're obviously the ones leading this. Ms. Nashif also expressed alarm at unnecessary use of force against thousands of people who have taken part in protests since Mahsa Amini died. Now, Henga, a Norway-based organization that monitors human rights in predominantly Kurdish areas of Iran. What is up with Scandinavians coming to the rest of the world and telling them what to do? Remember this, we were reading about a Swedish organization talking about how Pakistan didn't prepare for the floods. Go back to Sweden. Here you have a Norway organization monitoring the Kurds of Iran. Are they Kurds in Norway doing this? It seems out of place. Imagine if we imagine when we go to Egypt and set up an organization that will monitor, Mexican treatment by American officials out of Egypt. But it seems like the Western world could parent the East, and it's like acceptable. Imagine the other way around. Imagine Egypt gives press releases that they're very worried about their interests in the Gulf of Mexico, right? And they're alarmed by American policies. It's like it's always one way. Well, that's what happens when you have power. As I said a couple classes ago, that's what happens when you win the wars. You get the right to parent and to lecture the people that you have defeated. And that's essentially what's going on between the Western world and the East. So they said that a 16-year-old boy and a 23-year-old man were killed during the protests by open fire, live ammunition, in the western Azerbaijan province. They said that a woman was shot dead. And according to this Norwegian organization, 3 male protesters were killed by security forces in Kurdistan, Miss Amini's home, and 2 other towns. Gulnaz Esfandiari, unprecedented scenes in Iran. Woman sits on top of utility box, cuts hair in main square in Kerman to protest the death of Mahsa Amini after her arrest by the morality police. People clapped their hands and said, "Death to the dictator." Cutting your hair. I mean, wouldn't you actually, that sort of defeats the purpose though, right? Because if it's an anti-hijab, you want to have hair and show your hair. Because if you cut it, if you keep cutting it, you won't need hijab. In other words, there's no hair to show. Anyway, I don't understand the logic of the haircut, but fine. Whoa. I don't understand the logic of the haircut. Anyway, there has been no confirmation of those deaths from authorities, but the prosecutor of the city says that 2 people were killed by anti-revolutionary elements. The state-run news agency has said the police assistant died of injuries that he sustained at the hands of the protesters. By the way, this is a new thing that protesters will be, in America, they're trying to make protesters responsible for what they do too to police, so that you can be personally sued by that officer. I thought that already could be the case, but maybe not. In Tehran, videos posted online showing women taking off their headscarves and shouting "death to the dictator," a chant often used in reference to the supreme leader. All right, justice, liberty, no to mandatory hijab, they say. A woman who took part in a protest on Monday in Rasht, the city of Rasht, she sent the BBC photographs of what she said were bruises she suffered after being beaten by riot police with baton and being watered down by hoses. The police kept firing tear gas. Our eyes were burning. We were running away, but they cornered me and they beat me. They were calling me a prostitute, saying I was out in the street to sell myself. Another woman who protested in the central city of Isfahan told the BBC's Ali Hamadani, "While we were having our headscarves in the sky, I felt so emotional to be surrounded and protected by other men. It feels great to see the unity." Tehran Governor Mansouri tweeted on Tuesday that the protests were fully organized with the agenda to create unrest. Okay? So that's what's going on. Anyone else industry? Khalas. That's it. That's all we need to know about what's happening in Iran. Then it's all just other stories about it. My approach to people who don't want to practice the deen, who are Muslims, don't practice it. Not going to no one's going to chase after you. Don't chase after your relatives who don't want to practice the deen.
What did the Prophet say? Like, maybe it's not fully relevant.
Yeah.
But like, was it the Battle of Badr where the Prophet ﷺ would go around to the graves of the kuffar and basically say like, did you get what you want?
Yeah.
Like, did you get what you were looking for?
Exactly.
Or no, it was did you find Allah's promise to be true?
Yeah. Did your God? Yes, he said this, and basically like, okay, what do you want to achieve by becoming secularists who don't wear hijab? So don't. We're going to use force, right? So if that's how you're going to find happiness, go find the happiness, right? And see what happens. I never chase after people who don't want to practice the deen, and you don't think it's worth it, your time, and you think it's something bad. And if you have people like that in your family, don't chase after them. All right, opening up for question and answer. What are the methodology for enjoining good and forbidding wrong? Firstly, when can anybody command right and forbid wrong? When what is a category called al-ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura, all right, which is that which is known in religion by necessity, is flaunted. Like what? Like a person drinking alcohol. Anybody can command and forbid wrong with their tongue when they do that, when they see that. And in your home, with your hand. All right? Anything that is not ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura, known in religion by necessity, requires you to know about the matter before speaking on it. Not only do you have to know about the matter, you have to know about the context around the matter, because a ruling may not apply in certain circumstances. Right? A hukum of the Sharia may not be applicable if there is a dire need, for example. So that you may see someone, looks like he's doing something forbidden, but in fact, there's a need for this. So what's a good example of this? Of the need to know the context, not just the ruling. So Sahib al-Butlahiyya, Muhammad al-Nabigha, the author of the Butlahiyya, al-Nabigha, scholar, one of the ulama of Mauritania. He moved down, all right, he moved down to another place called Al-Qibla. And there he saw the people of the farmers and the people making tayammum when there's plenty of water. So he went to the local scholars there and he said, I see people making tayammum when there's no need to make tayammum. So the scholar said, before I answer you, I want you, and before you release your fatwa about this, I want you to wait and live amongst us for 1 week. So just wait a week. Live with us for another week. And then come back and let's talk about it. So he did. And he said, there's another problem you have. And he said, you mingle too much. The men and women, they're like in the same, they're all over in the same place all the time. It's mingling, too much mingling. So he said, for that, I want you to wait 1 month. Wait 1 year, and then come and talk to me. All right, after a year. So a week passed by, and he came back to the sheikh, and he said, here's my fatwa on the people making tayammum. Dry, it's a dry, symbolic, it's not even wudu, right? It's a symbolic action that allows you to pray. Now guess what his fatwa was? His fatwa was the prohibition of using water and the obligation of making tayammum in this city. Why? Because the nature of the soil there and the dirt would cake on the skin in such a way, a unique way, that would force someone to use so much water to get it off their body before they make wudu. And they would use so much water that if everyone did this every single day, there would be a water shortage, and they don't have a lot of water in the deserts, and people wouldn't be able to drink. So he ended up, not only did he retract his condemnation of making tayammum, he actually made it binding on people because of the context. So it's not just that when you command right and forbid wrong, you have to know the ruling, you have to know the context. Then he said, regarding the men and women mingling, he said, no, I retract my complaint about that. He said, because I've seen them, there's the way that they live, and they work in the farms and go to the marketplace to get food for the animals. No other way is possible except that they see each other all the time, but I noticed no man speaks to a woman or abuses her, right? They may be around each other, but they don't, nobody's harming anybody. Okay. So that's, when you forbid wrong, it can only be done by someone learned. He can't just be learned in the text. He has to be learning in the context too. He's got to be aware of the context. A lot of times people go study, they come back to the local masjid and they start forbidding wrong. Things that they see are laxities in the community. You don't realize some of the things that, most things that people do in their life is the lesser of two evils, right? Because some fights that you pick will start such a war that will be far more damaging than anything else. And so that's why a lot of times things are tolerated. Laxities may be tolerated for that reason, right? In certain contexts, certain circumstances. So you have to know the context as well. All right. Sophia says, what is Ihdad? Ihdad is 4 months and 10 days of mourning by the widow when her husband dies. And in this time, she doesn't do certain things, such as anything that resembles levity or celebration. The Sharia requires that, or it forbids it at that time. For 4 months and 10 days, she doesn't do things such as attend parties, have a party in her home, go somewhere without a need for 4 months and 10 days. Faradinho, where is yesterday night's Maliki fiqh recording? Only the previous recordings are there. Rai will take a look at for that. We should have them up. Okay, they should be up. Our goal is to put it up within 24 hours. So fiqh, he's looking right now up. Ashma, click, yeah. Ashmawiya, go to curriculum, and it's not up. No, it's not up yet. It's not up yet. Let me see if we have the recording. Here's a question. 1 + 1 = 2. Is that mutawatir or ahad? No, it's not mutawatir or ahad. Mutawatir and ahad are for transmitted knowledge. Yeah, it's for transmitted knowledge. Math is not a transmitted science. It's a rational science. Okay, so I'll find out about, Rai, could you ask about the recording, when it'll be put up? Yep. All right, let's see what else we got here. Have Western guys misunderstood or misrepresented liberalism? It depends which liberalism you're talking about. Firstly, there are different types of liberalism. And secondly, liberalism has a cultural definition, a common parlance definition for anything secular, not based in religion, right? Or morally open and loose. So there's a cultural term for liberalism. Then you have like classical liberalism, liberalism in economics, then different definitions of liberalism. But if you just, when a regular person just says liberal, what they mean is like morally loose, right? And not grounded in a religious law. What? Okay, good. It'll be up there tonight. Inshallah. All right, let's see what else we got here. Do you think that Iran will be Sunni under the Mahdi? Well, we know that the Mahdi conquers Persia, according to the narrations. We have to always remember that the narrations about the Mahdi that are specific tend not to be sahih, but there's like a lot of them that support one another. So just to be accurate about that. Imam Ahmad says, be very cautious about the signs of the end of time because their narrations are not always the strongest, and you can't promote narrations about the end of time that are too weak, because then if they don't happen or the opposite happens, then people will just have a crisis about it. Mahmoud Zaini, is it okay to eat with the left hand? La. Or to eat fast? Or when you're not able to? If you're not able to eat with your right hand, obviously if you have a cast, then of course. But it is, no, you eat with your right hand and you're not supposed to eat fast. The Prophet ﷺ would not prepare this one spoon of his food before, he wouldn't prepare a spoon of his food until he swallowed the previous spoon or handful of food. All right. What is your perspective on the Iranian hijab situation? My approach towards deen is that the heart of the person has to be convinced, and very rarely is force of religion useful. Very rarely, but I do think there should be. If I ruled, there would be blasphemy laws. That would be the biggest thing. Like whether you practice the deen or not, we can send out preachers, etc. I wouldn't even send out state preachers. I would fund people who apply for grants, and the people should do it. It's got to come from the people. And the only condition of the grant is that what you're preaching is Ahl Sunnah. That's it. Because anything state-sponsored has two agendas. May feel like the people may view it as two agendas. And the reason being is that the state may have to get their hands dirty, right? And you don't want people associating the deen with that. So I would much rather the deen come from the people. We have the money. You can sign up for a grant. You'll get a grant. But there are conditions to the grant. Is that what you're going to preach has to follow certain guidelines. And then let the deen come from people's movements. People's movements. Grassroots. Okay? Not top down. And the state will have blasphemy laws. Plenty of blasphemy laws. And executioners are wanted. Lashes, wanted. Sign up. Okay.
Yeah, I think also, like, this isn't even like an opinion, more like an observation from the Sirah.
Yeah.
Is that the rulings specific to these punishments and how people should be acting. This was more in Medina, right? After people's hearts were connected.
Totally.
Yeah. And what's Iran doing? Like that resembles the first 10 years.
Exactly.
In Mecca.
The Prophet ﷺ, he looked at the hearts of the people. The rules came after, and people willingly fulfilled the rules, right? They followed them. That's what you want. So the state, for example, I would have masajid. The state has money and could do these massive projects, build massive masajid. But yeah, maybe the state would be involved in having some masajid and imams, but I would much rather see the energy of the people, right? who are not connected to the state. So let the state be the bad guy. Like the dad in the house, let him be the bad guy. And have to set certain boundaries and never be the, like if the state has errors in it, corruptions, does things that are not good or distasteful to the people, which is going to happen for sure, you don't want that people to lump the perception of the deen with that. So you use your powers in certain ways, but it really has got to come up from the people. All right, let's see. Looking, what is the Ash'ari interpretation of looking at their Lord? Yes, there will be a vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is without distance or location. Fresh, organic, healthy food costs so much more. Is it israf to buy the better stuff? No, it's not. It's never israf to get something that is good for other people, like your family, or even for yourself, for your own body. No. Batul, I think he refers to staring at or they're talking about sajda in the Maliki school, and looks like Maliki Click has answered it. All right, here's a question from Maliki. What is the best way to facilitate longevity in Tasawwuf? You have to, there's no shortcut to this except you have to want it and continue to want it. There's no shortcut. There's no like one practice I could do that'll keep me there for a long time. No, it's, you have to want it at every day you have to earn it. Simple as that. There's certain things that don't have shortcuts, right? Like learning character, learning consistency. There are no shortcuts. There are shortcuts to other things, right, in life. But certain qualities of a human being have no shortcuts. Like, is there a shortcut to developing stamina? Probably not. You just have to keep running, right? Keep hitting that treadmill. Qasim says, what is Tasawwuf? Tasawwuf is defined as the study of all the verses and hadiths that relate to the purification of the heart. And that's what we're, oh, by the way, we're teaching that today. Oh, sorry, that's tomorrow. Today is Sheikh Osama's class. Today's Sheikh Osama's class, day. He's teaching Shafi'i fiqh. If you want to study Shafi'i fiqh and you want to study the advanced book of Aqida Jawharat at-Tawheed with Hashiyat al-Bayjuri, sign up today for arcview.org. Get ArcView, and Shafi'i fiqh will be taught on ArcView Basic. Jawharat al-Tawheed, Advanced Aqida, will be taught on ArcView Plus. Okay? Again, Jawharat al-Tawheed, which is Advanced Aqida, taught on ArcView Plus. All right? Secondly, tomorrow is between Hanbali fiqh at 6 p.m. and Tasawwuf at 7:30. I think I said 7:30, right? Yep. 7:15. Tasawwuf is, it's online. It's it's an online class too. Yeah. Yeah. It's on ArcView Basic. Mahiyatu Tasawwuf. What is the essence of Tasawwuf? So I'll be teaching that. You could sign up for ArcView Basic, only $10 a month. Yusuf says, can you do a video on what and how Islamic politics work, and can Muslim be secular? No, Muslim cannot be secular. Allah is going to question you at every turn. But I'm just saying certain, theoreticals of how I would do things if I had a situation like this. But clearly, I think it's all just meaningless, because as soon as, when you get thrust in a situation, you're gonna inherit whatever the world has to offer you. There's no such thing as, it's just sort of a fun make-believe thing when we say, oh, if I was king, yeah, you're also, you're inventing, in your imagination, you're imagining a context that doesn't exist and probably won't ever exist. When you come in and do something in the world, you are inheriting the context, the context that you're, that you have no choice about it, right? So Erdogan comes in. Of course, he would love to do certain things, but the context that he's in, he has no choice about. So, question is, when is Maliki fit class? My day for teaching at ArcView is Tuesdays. So I actually teach Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So Maliki fit class is on Tuesday. Hanafi, Monday, Maliki Tuesday, Shafi'i Wednesday, Hanbali on Thursday, so sign up at arcview.org for all of that. Qasim says, what country are you in the USA? I guess he means what state. We are in the state of New Jersey, which is a border 45 minutes away from New York City. We border New York City. New York State, I should say. With the different timings in France, can we still join the class? Yes, you can join the class, no problem. Because the recordings are going to be up within 24 hours, and you can still join. So basically, when you sign up, you're given a Zoom link. You get a confirmation message. It has a Zoom link for ArcView Basic and ArcView Plus. We have 2 tracks. And then you're given a schedule. At that time, just click on the Zoom link. The class will be there, all right? So it's a very simple system. What time is the Tasawwuf class in BST? All right, Rai, you're going to look for us. What is BST? British Standard Time? Is that what BST is? I thought it was GMT, British Summertime. So what is the difference between British summer times? Can you put timings in UK times, please, too, if possible?
If we say 7 p.m. here,
yeah,
it's going to be midnight in the British summertime.
So there's 5
hours. We're 5 hours earlier.
Okay. We're 5 hours earlier. Hold on a second. Let me just say this. So a lot of UK folks, and they want to know the timing. So we'll start doing that, right? So we'll start putting all the timings. And the way we'll do it is we'll just put a British flag and then put the timing next to it, right? We'll put the American flag, time, British flag, time. All right, that's the way we'll do it. So, again, when we put stuff out now, inshallah, what we'll do is we'll put the U.S. flag and that time, and then we'll put the British flag and the time next to it, so you'll know that that's BST. I guess British summertime, and then they change it to GMT after that? They have different times, I guess. But they're on the same time zone, all of them, right? Yeah. Okay. We continue. Yeah. Moab says, sometimes I have no choice but to pray in the meditation room, and it has statues of Jesus. Is my salah acceptable? Yes, as long as you're not facing the idol or the statue. How come ulama in the West are lenient towards the LGBTQ? Saying like it's okay to feel and not act on it. Does this create issues? The emotion is very strong, and people are afraid to spark the fire or something. So they do sometimes tiptoe around it. But it is also a fact that we have to state the facts that Allah Ta'ala does not take into account your feelings towards something, because you can't always control your feelings. And who knows why people feel what they do, right? Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, spoke about not being judged by what you can't control. So we do have to state that fact, because there are some people who may feel a certain way towards the same gender. And there are tons of, if not every single Muslim youth, feels a sexual attraction towards the opposite gender. That would be sinful for him too if he acted upon it, right? If you're not married and you're attracted to somebody, you got to deal with that. You have to control yourself. That's your test in life. If you're attracted to the same gender, the ruling is no different. Restrain yourself, control yourself, right? They may say that, well, the opposite gender, you can eventually get married, but if it's same gender, you can never get married. Yes, some tests have a solution and some tests don't. The blind wants to see for his entire life. Can he see? No. He will deal with that test for his entire life. Many paralyzed people, they want to use their legs again. They can't for their entire life. You lose your parents. She's never coming back to life. Or he. So you have to understand that certain tests are permanent. So in the idea of just stating that there's no harm in that. That's not being soft towards it. That's not considered softness in my opinion. Softness is basically, it has to refer to something that is sinful to say, or a truth that you don't say. Okay. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that we'll be with whom we love. Does that mean a woman will be with the man she loves even if he was not her husband? With whom he loves in this respect means who you followed in matters of the deen. You will be resurrected with your imam. Okay. You will be resurrected with your religious leader. That's the meaning. Whose teaching dictated your behavior and your decision making. That's the meaning of you'll be with whom you love. And no, if she loved a man and it wasn't her husband, is it possible? Yes, from the aspect that if a woman goes to the hellfire and a man goes to heaven, another man goes to the hellfire and a woman goes to heaven, and her husband goes to her wife goes to paradise, so that woman, she doesn't have a spouse in paradise. So yes, her spouse in paradise may be different from her spouse in the dunya if he didn't go to paradise. That's possible.
But this hadith is specific to the context. It's not general.
Which one?
This hadith where the person says, "Oh, I can't sin or I have problems," and the Prophet said, "Do you believe in?" He said, "I believe in you and Allah."
Yes.
So you'll be with whom you love.
Yes.
It's specific.
Specific to that person. Yeah. That hadith was specific to that person because the Prophet had accepted essentially his testimony was sincere, that he loved Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Lot of chit chat here between people. That was a thing. This is a new thing, by the way, that people are talking to each other rather than every comment here being a question. How do we have motivation to wake up each day and look forward to the future when we don't see any certainty of desirable things happening and we feel like giving up? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. It's about belief. Optimism is a result of belief, and belief is a result of cleaning your heart. So clean your heart and worship Allah much. Belief is a result of much ibadah. Do a lot of ibadah, okay? Do a lot of ibadah, and belief will enter your heart. Once you have belief, you can have optimism, okay? Don't try to do things by your power. Things will get done by Allah's power. And every day you should have your goals in front of you. I'm telling you, focus is a wonderful thing. Focus on your purposes and your goals. Yeah. And they should be by Allah's power, not by my power. What text is being taught in Tasawwuf? Habib Umar's book, The Essence of Tasawwuf and the Signs of Its People, or the Description of Its People. Okay. What is going on in the comment section between Batman, Superman? What is happening here? All right. Oh, Batman as a person. That's why they're talking to him. Okay. What do you say? Hanbali Aqida is false. La. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. It is not false. It is a valid and sound Aqida. I don't ever say Athari. I say Hanbali. Just say Hanbali. Why? So that you have a chain of transmission and you have some authoritative books. That's what I want. Athar is maybe, it's just a description of evidences, right? But the Hanbali Aqida is the correct expression, name, if you ask me. Now the Haq Knight says, the Haq Knight, not the Dark Knight, says, how do we interpret the stories where one says Allah spoke to them and quotes what they specifically heard spoken or said. Tajalli. You can say tajalli transmitted by an angel. And then you only believe it if you believe the person. That's the ruling on karamat and tajalliyat and bisharat. They're only to be believed if you believe that specific person. And of course, if they don't contradict the Sharia. Sheikh Akram Nadwi takes a different view on Talfiq. No, I don't go that route. Talfiq is not to be practiced because in that case you are putting the conclusion first and then choosing a conclusion that you want. We only go from, go to different opinions like that when they have no other choice. Talfiq, mixing the madhabs. Let's go here to Instagram and see what people are saying. Can we celebrate the mawlid if the method of, if what you do inside of it or in it is valid, right? But if what happens in it is not, then that's a problem. How do you deal with ikhtilat? If you're in a situation where gazing at the opposite gender is almost like impossible to avoid, then you can get yourself out of that situation as much as possible. Otherwise, you look down, you look away from the person, okay, and you stay away for a distance enough that you wouldn't be tempted, or some places are really jammed and you could even be touching each other, and that's a problem. And ikhtilat is something that where there is some urf involved in it of what is the boundaries. As we just said, a nabigha went to al-Qibla, an area in al-Maghrib, and he was shocked at all the men and women walking in the same place, and then the scholars there saying nothing about it. And he said that after a year, he realized this is just how they live. Maybe the way that their homes are set up or whatever disallows any other way. And the elder scholars there said, yes, they may be near to each other, but nobody touches anyone nor looks at them inappropriately or harms them. I wake up for tahajud and wake up for class at the same time. Is this acceptable? 100%. You're doing ihya'ul layl at that point, giving life to the night by doing many different ibadat. Mubin says, if parents get divorced, how does this affect birrul walidain? How can we draw balance between being obedient to one, obedient, and live one's own life? If sometimes those two contradict. When you grow and you are on your own as a man, and you work and you're on your own, at that point your parents, they don't give you orders anymore. They shouldn't. Your birr towards them is not about obeying their orders, because you've moved on financially and you take care of yourself now. Your birr towards them is to make them happy, to help them, etc. For a woman, it's when she marries. Then her father stops giving her orders. But her birr to her father is to make him happy, to help him, etc. Also, financially, that's an obligation. That's why you can never give zakat to your parents. The Quran says, protect your private parts except from your wives and those whom your right hand possess. What is the latter referring to? Slaves, back in the time of slavery. Prisoners of war, slaves that were considered slaves like from other places. What is the permissibility of having an Amir in an American community? What are the requirements for an Amir to be valid? You can have an Amir, but that Amir will be very limited because there will be an authority above the Amir. So, for example, you can willfully agree to have a leader, but what you agree to could be something that the leader can actually do, be limited to that. Why? Because, let's say the local authority, the police, is above the Amir, right? So the Amir cannot do certain things that the police would otherwise do, right? So the Amir's role, his leadership will be limited. And I would say that maybe you could say that the relationship between a CEO and an employee, the CEO is in charge. He calls the shots. And that contract between you and him may be very extensive. He may say that, listen, at any time I call you, you need to pick up the phone. Some jobs are like that. Some, like medical jobs, IT jobs. Anytime I call you, yeah, there are certain emergencies in technology. Things need to be solved. And you can be on call as it is. So within the bounds of your limitations, the limitations set that by the fact that the Amir is also a citizen, okay? And he's under the local authority. So within those bounds, if both sides agree, then you have an Amir and he won't be called a subject, but it's an Amir and whatever relationship. Follower, leader and follower relationship. If you join a football team for 10 months a year, your coach is your dictator, right? Your coach is your dictator. So question about slaves. Back in the day, what is slavery? Essentially, they didn't have prisons in the old days. And the slave, the prison, a slave is a prisoner, essentially, after a war. And they didn't have mega prisons, so what they did is they divvied it up amongst the soldiers. So we got now 800 enemy soldiers here. And if their women and children came out with them, then we got 800 men and 500 women. We have two options. Execute them all or put them in jail. There is no one big massive jail. In the old days, what they used to do is divvy up the jail so everyone's home becomes a jail, essentially. That's what slavery really was. What is the difference between a prisoner and a slave? There's no difference. You control their behavior, you control their body, essentially. So, but in the old days, you divvy it up amongst the soldiers. All right, you take one, your home becomes that prisoner's jail. And you can benefit from them. You work for us. You go out, work, and come back. I got to feed you. I got to house you, right? And if it was a female, now I have a female in my house. So the laws of hijab don't apply between that. So she doesn't have to wear, so between her slave master and her, there are some exceptions, such as if she was married. Now, you could have a slave, she's married. So therefore, there's a limitation there between the warden. Essentially, a soldier becomes a warden, right? And his home is a makeshift jail. And then it expands, every citizen. So you basically have taken these mega jails that we have now, and you just basically made it private, okay? And if you didn't want to take care of a slave anymore, you could sell him, right? I don't want to be a makeshift warden of a jail anymore, right? I don't want my home to be a jail anymore. All right, so I want to get rid of this. You sell them, okay? And so, but why? Because that other person can now benefit from that slave. So, and between male and female, then the rules of hijab are off. So that's the whole concept of like how slavery came about. Or not came about, but how slavery was inherited by the Islamic world. But slavery was the methodology of taking care of war prisoners. Not taking care of, dealing with war prisoners, taking advantage of war prisoners. These weren't your friends and your buddies. They were trying to kill you, right? So that's basically how it started up. I have an ayah hanging up in my room, says Triple H, who has now a new beard, which is good. Does the hukum of not facing my feet towards it apply? Yes, it does. So be very careful where you put your... be careful where you put your feet, okay? Where you put your posters too. So if you have Quran on all sides of the room, you have to leave a couple walls where you can put your feet. So Farhad says, why was it permissible to see each other's private parts? More than that was permissible. They could sleep with each other. Why? Because the slave and the master, now he's got a slave living in a prisoner essentially living in his home. He's made his home essentially part of the prison. Okay, and he's a warden now, so the rules have dropped, and they may sleep with each other. Apparently Jonathan Brown had a lecture on this with Yasir Qadi at the Epic Mosque. That explains a lot. But the summary of it is that essentially the rules were the logic behind it was that you didn't have jails, prisons. Everyone became a warden, and you divvied up all these soldiers and all these prisoners who were just 30 minutes ago trying to kill you. All right, and now you have divvied them up because you can't let them go. They wanted to kill you. Now you hear stories about slaves, yes, because they were sold across borders, right? It was like a legal status now, and they were sold across borders. So, slave comes from the word Slavic. So the first slaves, where it came about in the English language, were the Slavic people. And I just was talking to a brother who said that, yeah, his forefathers ended up in certain parts of Europe because of raids between tribes. Tribes would raid each other, or they would have wars, right? And the Sharia came to put laws on this stuff. Like, when could you take a slave and when you couldn't? It wasn't a free-for-all as it was in the old world. So, I mean, it's like human trafficking today. But the Sharia came and put limits on this stuff. So it used to be basically people were always attacking each other, and then you took slaves. When the Prophet ﷺ says, anyone with an atom's worth of faith will eventually be freed from hell, does that include believers from previous ummas? Of course. Meaning that the followers of Adam for Adam's time, the followers of Idris for Idris's time, the followers of Nuh until the next prophet came, the followers of Musa, of Sayyidina Ibrahim, right, and then the followers of Sayyidina Musa, so on and so forth. What if your ex loves you and wants you as a husband in the next life? What a scary thought. Oh my goodness. Any resources to learn more about the fitrah? Good question. We'll have to look that up. Can we give essal thawab to little children? I'm assuming Bushra is talking about little children who died. And yes, you can. Why not? They don't need it in the sense that they don't go to the hellfire anyway.
I think they make a lot, like a kid is doing it.
No, you can't do that. But anything that a kid does, they will get hasanat for it as a nafilah. Is it possible for Awliya to see RasoolAllah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the wake? Yes, and that came in hadith. من رآني في المنام فسيراني في اليقظة. Reminder to everyone, if you like this live stream and you benefit from it, nothing is free. Ryan's time, my time, this mic, this air condition, these lights, all cost money. This floor that we're sitting on, New Jersey's going to tax us for it. Right? This house that we're living in, New Brunswick Township is very happy to take taxes from it. The acquisition cost. Who supports this? You do. By going to patreon.com/Safina Society is how the people will support this live stream. We basically put ourselves in a situation where we either bring something that the people benefit from, they will support us from their own heart. Patreon.com/Safina Society, and I'm thankful to all of our patrons. And all of our patrons have recently gotten the link to our Umrah. Yep. Now, you say, oh, you're giving it to some and not others. There's only 40 seats. We can't just promote it everywhere. First, to the locals. It's targeting high schoolers, because we want the high schoolers to go to Umrah. So we sent it to them first. The patrons who've supported, right, they've made a sacrifice to support us. So they are to be treated accordingly. So we had the message go out to them too, and they could sign up for this Umrah too. So there are only 40 seats though. So,
Is it you or anyone else?
no, it's just me. Me and Sami Kadovic, right? But no other like Dawah speakers, no. Do you recommend deleting Twitter if you aren't somebody who has something to offer, or you can get hasanats by putting out good quotes and beneficial knowledge and inspirational quotes, then it's pointless. What is the ruling on saying a statement which taken literally is kufr, although some might argue it has a valid figurative meaning? I got to hear the statement. Hajra Mahmoud, following up, optimism and expectation are resulting in disappointment. That's Hajra, that is because one of two things. Either your actual faith in the matter needs to be strengthened, or that you're maybe lacking in heart and persistence. And I don't say that as an insult. This stuff is developed over time. That okay, be disappointed. Cry for 3 days, then you pick yourself up and do it again. Disappointment is not that big of a deal. Of course, it's a painful thing, but let yourself be down for a few days. It doesn't pass 3 days. Pick yourself up and try again, all right? And when you do that a couple times and you succeed, you realize, wow, willpower will overcome everything eventually, right? Because if you get what you want all the time, this is the problem with what parents do to kids. He doesn't know what disappointment means. So one small bit of disappointment is shattered, right? But disappointment, all right, dust yourself off, go again. That's why loving something is one of the best lessons in life. You love it so much that you can't stop. You won't stop. You get disappointed, you pick yourself up, you try again, and it works. You realize, wow, I failed 10 times before I got this. So next time you go and you fail 5 times, it's not a big deal. It doesn't affect you as much. It's like, that's okay. Failed 5 times. We'll get it in the 6th time. I'm telling you, some people, I've seen them fail at something for 40 years. What amount of drive must have they had to try something for 40 years until they finally got what they were looking for? They must have picked themselves up and failed and picked themselves up hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. So disappointment's bad. But have heart, have persistence, have some sandpaper in your personality. Thicken up your skin. Get up again and try it again, right? And that's the whole concept of character and willpower. Allah gave us this gift of what we call al-himma. What is himma? It's human willpower, right? It's ambition. It's desire. This is himma. And you should have a strong himma, not a himma that falls and collapses quickly, right? You want to collapse? You can collapse for a day, for an evening. Collapse, fall asleep, sleep 6-7 hours, you wake up fresh. You start over again, okay? And you got to read about people's lives. There are people who tried things, hundreds upon thousands of failures before they got their success. All right, so you got to read about those to realize that you're not alone in this. Everyone's doing this. And quitting, it's not the attribute you want for yourself. But dying while trying at least is, right? So that's my 2 cents for Hajra. The Umrah is December 23rd to January 1st. We leave from JFK Airport in New York City, and you will have to transport yourself to New York City. That's probably a hassle for if you're from the East Coast, you got to come to JFK. If you're anywhere from America, you got to come to JFK. If you're from England, they could actually sell you the land package, and you get yourself there. So that is an option too. So you get the land package and you get yourself there. What's the question, Sam?
What's the wisdom behind Al-Aziz being mentioned twice at the end of Surah Al-Hashr?
We'll have to look in the tafsir about that. That's a good question. Why do traditionalists force themselves to say PBUH? Doesn't it allude to a doubt that God's treatment of him in the afterlife? Okay, good question. We don't force ourselves. We it is an honor to send salah and salam on the Prophet. And we are the recipients of that. So the backstory is this. The companions used to feel downtrodden, sad, what have you. They would go to the Prophet ﷺ, and the presence of the Prophet and the light of the Messenger ﷺ would, as if it emits from his heart to their heart. And they would be lit up, revived. And the Prophet saw this in his companions. And the Prophet ﷺ began thinking of, what about the Muslims after me? They won't have this. I won't be able to sit with them. I won't be able to help them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw the sadness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and gave him a gift. The gift was that after you're gone, the Muslims cannot sit with you, but they can send salutations upon you sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they will receive a relief of all their anxieties and their griefs. Grief is for the past, anxiety for the future. Okay? So that's why we benefit from peace be upon him. When we say peace be upon him, no, it is Allah who sends down peace on the Prophet, peace be upon him, and many other spiritual gifts. When we say that, we are taking that peace for ourselves. All right? So it is as if saying, the peace that is upon the Prophet, I'm taking some and putting it in my own heart. And you will see the relief go away. So we don't just say it when we say the Prophet's name. We say it as a religious act of worship on its own, repeating it. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Many ways of saying the same thing. And we repeat this hundreds and thousands of times. And just like a guy does push-ups. All right, just do one push-up and call it a day. It's meaningless. You have to do a lot of push-ups to get a result. Likewise, dhikrillah, Allah tells us in the Quran, it must be done a lot to get a result. So we say a lot of it, and we feel the results, and we enjoy it. And it becomes to us like a type of food for the heart, and a cleanser of anxieties, and a washer away of grief, and a replacement, and really makes almost everything that you do in life has a type of charm to it. That's the best way to explain it. Tayfun, any good books and biographies on Muslim scholars? There is Al-Muhaddithat. It's a long book on female hadith transmitters. Are there Shafi'i imams that teach at Medina? Not that I know of. And what does Greek logic presuppose? I don't know the summary of Greek logic. I could probably look that up and study it for you and give you a summary later on, inshallah. Should I go to Umrah or make Hajj first? If you can save up for Hajj, then make Hajj first, rather than spend your money on 1 or 2 Umrahs and then miss out on Hajj. Save up your money and go to Hajj first. Essal thawab is sending the good deeds that you have accrued. It is for someone who died as a Muslim. Imagine if somebody said hyperbolically that something took forever or has been since forever, but he intended a long time. Is that kufr? No. There's no insult or rejection of any doctrine or article of faith in saying that.
It's like how we say, like, oh, I need some water to quench my thirst.
Yeah.
It's metaphorical.
It's a hyperbole. It's metaphorical. It's like that. It's like someone who's saying I'm starving. He's not lying. It's just hyperbolic speech. Qasim RV, what would you advise an ordinary person to read? The Opening of Hearts by Suyuti or not? Yes, I would read it. Can you recite Bala wa ana ala dhalika min ash-shahideen after Surah At-Teen? Well, the Prophet's sunnah is to say that, but you don't say it out loud. You say it to yourself. What is the date of the Umrah trip? December 23rd to January 1, but it's not public out yet. It's just been sent to the patrons and to MBIC locals, our community locals, because our real goal first tranche of it is to get the youth, the high schoolers. Okay. And it could be high schoolers from anywhere. So we gave first priority to our high schoolers, and now we're advertising it to the patrons, and soon we will put it out for everyone if the seats don't go. But we are giving the right to the locals first, and then to the patrons. With anybody could go, but we're just targeting and encouraging the youth. That's really what we want. And if they sign up, good for them. If they don't sign up, they're going to miss out, and you guys will take the spots. And for the land package, you get the land package, and the transport is on you. Let's say you want to come from England, that's how it would work. How does one build thick skin and not be sensitive? I don't think sensitivity is the issue per se, but it's what happens with the sensitivity, right? And anything that you do multiple times, you will eventually become immune to it. I mean, I remember on social media the first time someone said something bad, like a complete stranger talked about me on social media. I was like surprised, right? It was like a shock. But after a while, you just get used to it. People who put up ridiculous comments, I sort of now grade them, right? When someone tries to say something and like a put down or something, I grade it in my mind. Like, that was not so impressive. Sometimes they're really impressive. I tell them that was a good one, right? But how else are you going to deal with it, right? You have to let it bounce off you. So when you're exposed to something over and over, that's what happens. So it's not about being sensitive. It's about, are you going to quit or not? And if you're not going to quit, then you're going to try again. Because think about what your options are. Quitting is miserable. So it's not necessarily that you're going to succeed next time. It's that, what other options do you have? So keep going, right? Samara Noreen says, did you answer my question about tahajjud? Can you put it up again? Because I don't see it here. Oh, but what if you love tahajjud but you struggle with sleep? You would have to try to wiggle it around such that maybe you have to sleep way earlier, right? Or you make tahajjud on the days that you don't have to get up early. What if we suspect an esthetician is a woman? Meaning a beauty person, like a beauty parlor or whatever? What do they call these days? They don't call them beauty parlors anymore. They call them esthetician, I guess. Aesthetics? Yeah, like a salon, right? A skincare professional. If you suspect that they are a woman, well, if you're a guy and you're going to have someone rub your skin, it cannot be another woman.
I think, yeah, she says it's a woman-looking person. But
Oh, it's a trans woman. You're in trouble.
I thought that their company was that they're women.
If they fully transformed, and when you look at the person, you're like, that's a woman, then you may treat them by Islamic law as a woman. In other words, if they're going to give you some treatment on your hair, it is permitted, yes. Okay, but if you say like, no, the voice is deep, shoulders are broad, first glance, that's not a woman, then you cannot treat them as a woman. And you cannot get a massage from them or whatever it is.
Very confusing.
It's getting very confusing. And they're trying to be
It's
confusing.
hard to tell in these college classes. Like
That's
I borrowed a
ridiculous.
pencil from someone,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Thanks, man."
Oh my
Like
God.
2 weeks
They
ago.
got upset, huh?
No, they didn't say anything. But I was looking at them the other day. I'm like, "Wait, I
That's a
don't know if
dude?
that's I don't know."
Oh
if it's a
my
dude or
God.
not. I said, "Thanks, man." So,
That is crazy. That's
sticky
insane.
situation.
It is, man. Subhanallah. All right, so the Turk there. Did we answer his question about the atheist Turk? Does that answer his question? I don't know if it did or not, but Dr. Shadi, when I visit MBIC, can you have Ryan pick me up in a limo? Isn't he a celebrity by now? Because the people at MBIC know about him. You know that? Yeah, because they watch the stream too. Amin says, are there Shafi'i imams? We answered this question. Please make dua that Allah makes a way out for me, says Batul. Keep reciting. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu min al-dhalimin. Pakistan is now thinking of passing a law that opened his door for LGBT. Many citizens are against it. In Hanafi fiqh, we recite Fatiha in the third and fourth rak'ah when we pray alone or as imam. We don't recite it while following the imam. He must be answering another person's question. Random user, does anyone have advice on how to have genuine love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? See, love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not one of the natural loves. It's one of the spiritual loves. What is the difference? A natural love is something that happens with an easy explanation. So, for example, when you love a person who loves somebody, like a woman, that's a passionate love because man is attracted to women. When he loves his kids or his friends, it's easy to explain that and understand that. When he loves a book, because the content made him enthralled. When he loves a flower or a tree, it's because it's beautiful. When he loves a piece of technology, because it's useful to him. Okay? So these are all natural loves, and a person has many, many natural loves, right? What is a spiritual love? A spiritual love is not a natural. Had nothing to do with our bodies and our personalities. It starts with a belief, and that belief is that Allah has sent this messenger to us, and that belief is that this messenger has shown our deeds, so He knows who we are, and that belief is that Allah will love us more if we follow this prophet and love him and send a lot of salah and salam upon him and keep him on our mind all the time when we live our lives and even just with our emotions. So we do this by physically telling ourselves with our minds, okay, God loves this, so I'm going to do it. There's no feeling in your heart, but you do it because your mind says this is what Allah wants us to do. In due time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the love of the Prophet inside your heart. So you then become someone who loves the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's why we say it's a spiritual love. It is something that is not a natural love out in the world that you can understand or describe, but it's something that after you committed yourself and you followed it with your body and with your beliefs and with your sincerity, then Allah places that love in your heart. Salah and salam on the Prophet is more of a natural love. It's just rarer and harder to explain. Reason being is that as we hold it to be, when you say this salah and salam, it is as if a special honey is placed down in your heart, relieves your anxieties, you find your issues are opening up, your mood is completely changing, and then you start to love the dhikr itself, right? And then you realize, wait, the dhikr itself only has this magnetic attraction of all these wonderful things because of Allah's love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and that's your link to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's the basic understanding of how is it that we have this in our heart. Marix London says, do you recommend any conversation to have on the first meeting with prospective prospects for marriage? I have only dated in the days of Jahiliyyah, but I fix myself. And I would say your first meeting should be general, very general. The first meeting should not even be about any subject, right? It's an icebreaker, right? Just an icebreaker. And I don't even think it should just be the two people, right? It's too awkward. It should be like maybe there are other people around too, right? From the family or whatever. So it's like a family meeting. They're just having a dinner. That's it. Maybe even other families are there. And then it's an icebreaker. You get to see whether you like the person or not. If they both find that there is a opening, you're not saying yes, I'll marry them or not. You're just saying, are they even worth considering? Not to say worth considering like some people are not worth anything, but no, like, do I even want to pursue this? If the answer is yes, then the next meeting is on philosophy of life. Like, what are beliefs and philosophies of life? Really broad things, like super broad things. Not like, okay, what should we paint the house? No, really broad things. What do you believe about life? Like, where does right and wrong come from? Like, what do we do with our lives, et cetera, et cetera? What's the purpose of life? What do we believe about Islam? About things like that. It may then spill into, now you start getting to the next layer of specifics. Like, what do I physically want? So that's what we call the vision. Then the mission. How do I gonna live my life? Oh, I want to live my life in New Jersey. I want to live my life in London. I want to raise my kids this way. Okay. I want to live in this manner. I want to spend my time doing this. So now you went from icebreaker to vision, very broad beliefs and philosophies, to mission. How am I going to execute that vision? Right? I want to live here. I need to live next to my parents. I want to travel. I want to have a lot of kids. I want to have no kids. I want my kids homeschooled. I want my kids in Islamic school. I want my kids in a public school. I don't even want to have kids. All of that. I want to dedicate myself to my company. I want to dedicate myself to the masjid. These are now you're entering into the big blocks of life. Now, if you passed by these three and you're in alignment with these three, the rest is details. You're ready to get, and you like each other's personality. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the second meeting or the third meeting. So personality is part of that. So personality, appearance, and vision and mission lines up. You're ready to be engaged. Engagement does not mean you're married. It means you are intending to marry each other. Now, these meetings may require 2, 3, 4 meetings, right? It's not just, maybe it won't be just 3 meetings. Younger people, it's usually, I don't know about this generation, they're a bit different. But in my time, people were a bit simpler. But people may need a couple more meetings and time between the meetings. Let it marinate. You can't rush this thing. This is the biggest decision in your life. You pray a lot of istikhara, you meet again, etc. And but these are the 3 things you're going to do: an icebreaker, a vision of life, and how you execute that mission, vision in the big major things of how you live and how you want to live. If these things line up, then that person is actually that couple looks promising. Then you get engaged. What is the purpose of engagement? Engagement is an announcement to the public that these 2 people intend to get married. And basically that now nobody else is going to get involved. Like, no one else is going to propose to her, and you're not going to get into talks with anyone else. You intend to get married. In the engagement, the wisdom of it is that anything hidden comes out. The things that may have been not present, they come out. So that's why you want to be engaged for a period of time. So that you can't physically hide anything, right? You're now having like these family dinners together, whatever, and people's true colors come out, right? So you want that buffer to happen. Also, it's like a psychological buffer. This is the person I'm living with. I mean, wake up with them someday. So you don't want that to be, a shock to you. All right, so that's the thing. And then after that, it's marriage after that. So that's how simple. That's how it is. We missed something on the news. Al-Imam is saying, Adnan Syed released from prison. How did we miss that in the news? Unbelievable. Yes, Adnan Syed is out of prison, and if you don't know about him, go to his... there is a whole podcast about him that was like fire a couple years ago. It was such a good podcast about his case. Well, now he's out of jail. Okay. Khalawait, if you look at the person and you say, that is a woman, okay? That's a woman. Then you can do it. If you look at the person and say, I don't know what that is, then don't do it. That's it. That's how you do it. Adnan Syed was put in jail. Very sad thing, on a case that a lot of people felt was the evidence was sort of bogus against him. It's a big story, big issue. So look it up. It's an interesting podcast. I'm sure he's going to be all over the place talking about his story. If someone dies on a Friday, says Aisha L, in Ramadan while praying, oh my goodness, reciting the Quran, this is a wonderful death. Yes, would anyone doubt that that is a lot of mercy in their heart, right? When they do that, when they die like that? Sorry, a lot of mercy from Allah Ta'ala for them when they die like that? Okay, we are going to wrap up. Can Malikiya recite Fatiha third and fourth rak'ah? Yes, you can. Another question, I have a hard time waking up for tahajjud. Is nafila after Isha tahajjud? No, nafila after Isha, no. Abu Bakr, what he did was he prayed witr before tahajjud. Anything you do before sleeping is called qiyamul layl, and it is a great reward, but nothing like tahajjud. If you have trouble waking up for tahajjud, you try to just sleep ridiculously early. It's impossible not to. If you sleep at 9 p.m. and tahajjud is at 4 a.m., and now we're getting into the winter, it could be at 5 a.m. That's your 8 hours of sleep right there. You wait 5 a.m., you're up for the day. Can you give us the link for the Adnan Syed podcast? What was it called? The Adnan Syed podcast was This American Dream. That's the title of the company that made the podcast, or the program is called This American Dream, and Adnan Syed was one of the podcasts. Can you ask if a niqabi to see her face if you are looking to marry her? And Sophia said yes, it was the Serial podcast. I don't know if you can ask a niqabi. I don't think so. I don't know about that. Do Ash'ari say Iman rises and decreases? Yes, it does.
This is just isn't it the Salafis try to just like berate Hanafis for saying that it doesn't? It's just a matter of words.
Correct.
Describing.
When the Maturidis talk about Iman, if I'm quoting them correctly, or if I understand them correctly, what they mean is that the belief itself is one. And we say that too. Every mu'min, the basis of his belief is just is that it's certain. There's no doubt in it. But certainty has levels of strength, and that's what we say can increase and decrease. The strength of it, not the faith itself. If you have doubt, you're not a Muslim. Like maybe there's a God, maybe no, maybe no. No Muslim says maybe. No, there is Allah and there is the Messenger and there is the Akhirah. No discussion. Now the strength of that Iman is reflected in our behavior. Okay. All right. We have to stop here, unfortunately. Let us now talk about our classes. Today, what is up today on ArcView? By the way, you can join ArcView today. You will get 40 extra classes, pre-recorded. And ArcView today is for Sheikh Usama's day. He's teaching Shafi'i fiqh. And then tomorrow, and then tonight, right after that, Jawharat al-Tawheed. This is going to be a great class. Jawharat al-Tawheed, one of the best books in Aqida. Okay, one of the greatest works in Aqida is Jawharat al-Tawheed. Okay. Okay. Here's a piece of news. This is great. This is great. Yeshiva University is a Jewish university in New York. It's a regular college, but they also have like religious training. The New York Supreme Court ordered forcing Yeshiva University to allow a gay club. Of course, they're against this, right? They're against this. What did this Orthodox Jewish university, how did they respond to this? They went into the laws and asked, is a university required to allow clubs at all? And the answer was no. So Yeshiva University canceled all student clubs. There are no student clubs. If we're forced to recognize a gay club, and we don't want to because we don't believe in it, so we have canceled all student clubs. That's Yeshiva University for you. And put that in the news today for news of the Umma, because hey, if they can do it, right, we should be able to do it. That's the truth. Allah Ta'ala has given us a hujjah. They are a hujjah for us, against us now. They are a hujjah against us right now, because if now they come to any other Islamic university, right, or any Islamic college, they did it. They were able to resist. Cancel all the clubs. That's just, it has halted all activities, all undergraduate clubs, canceled. You gonna corner us? No, you're not, right? The students say that they will delay seeking recognition if the other clubs can resume. So there you go. That's a hujjah against us now. Now you know how to deal with the issue. Okay. Let's see what we got here. There's someone who hasn't prayed regularly for many years, and they now have started praying at least some salahs, and they're also making tahajud. And I was just saying, I'm not sure you can just go ahead with nawafil when you have years of obligatory prayers that have been missed. Okay? So, forgive me if I'm wrong. No, you're not wrong. You're correct. Here's the answer to this. The answer to this is that the different madhabs have different rulings. The Hanbali school holds that all you have to do is make tawbah. Why? When you weren't praying, you weren't a Muslim. So therefore, none of your good deeds count either. That's pretty heavy. The Hanafi school requires you to make up your obligatory prayers and the sunnah mu'akkada prayers. And they have their list of the 12 rakahs throughout the day. The Maliki madhab disallows somebody to pray nawafil if you owe fara'id. So if they want to pray tahajjud, they will have the same result and even greater result if they pray, let's say, a day's worth of obligatory prayers in the middle of the night. Why? Because a make-up prayer is an obligation. An obligation is heavier than an nafilah. It's the time of night that matters. So they could pray a full day of qada in the middle of the night. Okay. The only prayers that are sunan that they could do while owing qada are the communal ones, such as the rain prayer, the eclipse prayer, and the Eid prayer. All right, folks, let's turn to our dua. Today's Wednesday, and on Wednesday is a sa'at ijabah. And listen to this. This is to me so valuable. I thank Allah and I pray that we're truly able to take advantage of this. The two things that are just outside of Yom Arafah and Laylat al-Qadr is to be able to make Umrah on Thursday night, the night before Friday. Even if not Umrah, Tawaf, and spend the night there until Fajr. And it doesn't have to be like from Maghrib to Fajr. That's too exhausting. But late in the night, right? So you take a nice long nap on that day. You wake up, okay, from that nap. You pray Asr, pray Maghrib, You're ready to go. You get rested, you eat your dinner, then you go down to the masjid, and then you do either a umrah or a tawaf or what have you. Okay? And that is on Thursday night before Friday. The other thing, alhamdulillah, that is part of this package, I thank Allah and I pray that we are able to do this. And I hope and I pray to Allah Ta'ala that we're able to take advantage of this and our prayers are answered. Is that we will be now at the real site of where this happened on Wednesday between Dhuhr and Asr in Medina, inshallah ta'ala, in this Umrah. So we've been talking about the dua, right? And guess what that masjid is called? Masjid al-Fath, right? Where the Prophet ﷺ received the acceptance of his dua on Wednesday between Dhuhr and Asr for the conquest of the Ahzab, the Confederates that are around, right? Confederates that. Habib Omar, when we told him about this, we had pitched it to them like it's a masjid. He said, call it Masjid al-Fath, right? So, we've been talking about this for over a year and a half now. يوم الأربعاء بين الظهر والعصر ساعة إجابة. Okay? It's a time, in between that time is a time where Allah answers dua. And many people have experienced this. And Jabir ibn Abdullah is the narrator, and he said he experienced it. So we'll now turn, so when we go to Umrah, we will be in Medina on Wednesday, and we will go to that mosque and do the dua there. Inshallah, have a long period of people can do their own solitary prayers there. Let's now turn to our Hizb al-Nasr. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا فتحنا لك فتحا مبينا ليغفر لك الله ما تقدم من ذنبك وما تأخر ويتم نعمته عليك ويهديك صراطا مستقيما وينصرك الله نصرا عزيزا وكان عند الله وجيها في الدنيا والآخرة ومن المقربين وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نصر من الله وفتح قريب وبشر المؤمنين يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا أنصار الله كما قال عيسى ابن مريم للحواريين من أنصاري إلى الله قال الحواريون نحن أنصار الله الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون والله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم والله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم أعيذ نفسي بالله تعالى من كل ما يسمع بأذنين ويبصر بعينين ويمشي برجلين ويبطش بيدين ويتكلم بشفتين حصنت نفسي بالله الخالق الأكبر من شر ما أخاف وأحذر من الجن والإنس وأن يحضرون عز جاره وجل ثناؤه وتقدست أسماؤه ولا إله غيره اللهم إني أجعلك في نحور أعدائي وأعوذ بك من شرورهم وتعيلهم ومكرهم ومكائدهم أطفئ نار من أراد بي عداوة من الجن والإنس يا حافظ يا حفيظ يا كافي يا محيط سبحانك يا رب ما أعظم شأنك وأعز سلطانك تحصنت بالله وبآيات الله وملائكة الله وأنبياء الله ورسل الله والصالحين من عباد الله حصنت نفسي بلا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم اللهم احرسني بعينك التي لا تنام واكنفني بكنفك الذي لا يرام وارحمني بقدرتك علي فلا أهلك وأنت ثقتي ورجائي يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا درك الهالكين يا درك الهالكين يا درك الهالكين. اكفني شر كل طارق يطرق بليل أو نهار إلا طارقا يطرق بخير إنك على كل شيء قدير. بسم الله أرقي نفسي من كل ما يؤذي ومن كل حاسد. الله شفائي بسم الله رقيت. اللهم رب الناس أذهب الباس. اشفي أنت الشافي وعافي أنت المعافي. لا شفاء إلا شفاؤك شفاء لا يغادر سقما ولا ألما. يا كافي يا وافي يا حميد يا مجيد ارفع عني كل تعب شديد واكفني من الحد والحديد والمرض الشديد والجيش العديد واجعل لي نورا من نورك وعزا من عزك ونصرا من نصرك وبهاء من بهائك وعطاء من عطائك وحراسة من حراستك وتأييدا من تأييدك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام والمواهب العظام. أسألك أن تكفيني من شر كل ذي شر إنك أنت الله الخالق الأكبر. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والحمد لله رب العالمين ظاهرا وباطنا وعلى كل حال يا أرحم الراحمين. Inshallah, we'll have a silent dua now for a few minutes. sallallahu ala seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve sahbihi ve sellem. Subhana rabbike rabbil izzati amma yasifun ve selamun alel murselin velhamdülillahi rabbil alemin.
Aşkınla arasında yıldızlar kadar zikredin. Uzat şarabından için şu canı aşkla versin ya kalbe şifa